Mr. President.
The Mueller report's interesting. After $35 million, with 13 increased to 18 angry Democrats, people that were absolutely haters of Trump, they found no collusion. It was an illegal investigation. It was started illegally. Everything about it was crooked. This was an attempted coup. This was an attempted takedown of a president. And we beat them.
Why? Wait, Mika, I don't understand. He's panicking there. It's a laughable freak out on Donald Trump's part. He's just spitting out everything he can. He's swinging wildly, and yet just a couple of weeks ago, he was praising the investigation, calling it honorable. Remember when everybody was taking a victory lap? Why it sounds like he must be concerned with what's coming up.
Maybe. The redacted version of Robert Mueller's report on Russian election interference is now expected to be released this week, nearly 2 years after Mueller's appointment as special counsel. The Wall Street Journal reports that on Friday, Justice Department officials were in the final stages of planning the delivery of roughly 400-page report to lawmakers. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports that aides say President Trump has become emboldened by Attorney General William Barr's summary, even as the White House awaits new details.
Well,
there's no way, by the way, that summary he released can encapsulate even 1/10 of what is in a 400-page report that includes the quote that he did use in his summary is that it is not an exoneration in terms of obstruction. So the stories in there and the evidence in there and the facts in there must be fascinating.
Well, Jonathan Lemire, I know in college you used to like to listen to Dark Side of the Moon while watching The Wizard of Oz. We all did, of course. But there's that moment in Wizard of Oz, remember when the Wicked Witch of the West starts crying, I'm melting, I'm melting. Well, Donald Trump sort of did that politically in front of those cameras. Like, he was in a full-blown meltdown there. And can you give us some insight as to why he would go from saying Robert Mueller did an honorable job on the report after the Barr letter came out to this meltdown where he's spitting and crying about a coup and all that other nonsense, whatever he was spitting out. He sounded like a desperate man. What's going on here?
Well, first, I was more of a U2 REM guy in college. But what we're seeing here from the president is, first of all, the American public has now waited almost 2 years for Robert Mueller's report. And let's just say, don't make plans next 2 or 3 days, because that is the widely held belief is when we're going to see this, or at least see some of it. And the great question, of course, remains how much of this is going to be redacted when it is handed to lawmakers, and of course then the media also gets to see it. But inside the White House, we saw, you played the clip there, right after Barr put out his summary, the president was relieved. He called it a total exoneration, which of course it was not. But he said that Robert Mueller acted honorably. He took his victory lap. He and his allies did. He had that rally in Michigan where he spent 15 minutes on a screed saying that that he was proven right, that there was no collusion, that he was going to use this report as a political weapon against his enemies. That tone has changed in the last couple of weeks. There's a growing recognition from the president and people around him that there's going to be, if not criminal, but really damaging and embarrassing information that's going to be coming out in this report. They know this is going to be a problem, and their strategy is this. They're going to take the Barr summary and say that is what matters. That's the top line. That is how we're going to try to suggest that is what matters, and that the report itself is just filling in the details, that they're going to claim the Democrats are going to twist it and take what conclusions they want from it, while the Attorney General has already made his ruling. Now, of course, let's all point out, the Attorney General obstruction was who made the ruling not to charge an obstruction, was appointed by Donald Trump after putting out his own, as a private citizen, letter casting doubt on the entire basis of the Mueller investigation. So the president and his White House, they're going to try to thread the needle here. They're going to try to just make it a sort of, and it's going to end up falling down to us versus them. It's going to be blue versus red. People are going to see what they want to see from it. But certainly the White House is going to try to ask their backers to suspend disbelief and believe Barr and not Mueller.
I mean, how ridiculous. That's like reading the cliff notes to War and Peace and saying you didn't want to be bothered with the details of Tolstoy, his actual novel, that you had read the cliff notes and you were disregarding that. By the way, for the record, I too was a U2 and REM guy in college, but I had no Wizard of Oz link to Murmur, so I did I did the best I could do, Jonathan. So Mike Barnicle, it really is quite a spectacle seeing this president panic the way he is about a Mueller report that he thought was put together honorably after the Barr letter.
Well, Joe, you know, yesterday, in the immortal words of Bono and U2, was a beautiful day. And we saw the reaction. That it's an old clip from the president complaining, Donnie. But it somehow ties in, I think, to what happened in South Bend, Indiana yesterday as well. The contrast. I mean, Pete Buttigieg is on the edge of articulating a universal statement about this country when he says, can't stop the clock, and you know, here we are. Yeah. And Buttigieg is out there yesterday, and he's kind. He has a message of compassion, of generosity, of normalcy in this exhausted country. And now we have the Mueller report, apparently, you know, maybe tomorrow, and the burdens that the normal citizen is carrying. I just think someone's message like Buttigieg, it's out there, it's resonating.
Mike, I went to the exact same place, contrasting our A block and our B block. And you watch Trump, and obviously we are not Trump fans to say the least, and you watch his reaction to the upcoming Mueller report, and we know what the next week is going to be, and we know there'll be 50 more vile instances of inappropriate, quid pro quo, disgusting behavior. And there's a fatigue. I still don't think, as we talked last week, it's going to move. Trump is at 43. He stays at 43. But the presidency in politics is an ongoing show. And you just saw those two different segments of a show. You saw Buttigieg, and you saw the hope, and you saw the goodness. And then you saw Trump. And you're starting to get the feeling, maybe 36 months into Donald Trump on the scene, whichever side you're on, there's a bit of a fatigue here. Oh, yeah. You contrasted those two, and it says it all.
Then, Donnie, would you say, or Mike, would you say that the fatigue is indicative of a kind of decrease in concern, or just folk tired? So the Mueller report is going to hit, and then we still have the tax returns. We still have all the stuff that goes to the heart of our democracy with regards to Donald Trump. And even though Mayor Pete is offering us a better story, there's still the reality of the illness that we're in at this moment.
But elections are choices. It comes down to a choice. Right. You know, what do you want? And I think an increasing number of Americans, they want calmness. They want a restoration of the spirit of what they think this country is all about. And the spirit of what this country is all about is not lying, it's not malevolence, it's not daily division implemented by the leader of this country, the President of the United States. It's more to the side of what Buttigieg was talking about yesterday.
The other thing we need to watch here as the report drops is not just how the president reacts to it, but how do Democrats react to it? What do they take that as basis to launch other investigations? Do they take that and start talking impeachment again, if there are things in there that could be that damaging? So that's going to be the other part of the equation.
And the building blocks of the obstruction case in the Mueller report, I am told by several people, are going to be enough that the average person, not litigators, not lawyers, they're going to be looking at it and saying, wow.
Right. If not criminal, but at least this looks damaging.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's certainly politically damaging. And now, of course, Mika,
yes,
it's the time for the part of our show that a new segment, actually, that we're bringing on called Isn't It Ironic?
Yes.
And no, Sarah Sanders, ironic is not a sport or an Avengers movie.
No.
Mika, take us there.
President Trump said the media should be giving more attention to a senior White House advisor being indicted for charges stemming from the Mueller investigation. Trump tweeted, President Obama's top White House lawyer, Gregory B. Craig, was indicted yesterday on very serious charges. This is a really big story. But the fake news New York Times didn't even put it on page one, rather page 16. Washington Post, not much better. Tiny Page 1. Corrupt news.
Corrupt news. So here we go. Are you ready?
I'm thinking here.
I'm going to talk very slowly so some people can figure this out in the White House, okay?
Yeah.
So, quote, very serious charges and a really big story?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that is, of course, exactly the charges that were brought against the President of the United States, first National Security Advisor.
Mike Flynn.
Of course, we speak of General Michael Flynn. So if those are very serious charges.
Big story.
Those are, in fact, Mike Barnicle, the very serious charges that Donald Trump tried to get the FBI director to sweep under the carpet and kill the investigation. Very serious charges.
He thinks
well, my
people are
God,
stupid.
if you were trying to kill an investigation into, quote, very serious charges, the president's words, of course, are not mine, then, of course, that sure smells like obstruction of justice.
Well, Joe, in keeping with this brand new segment, which is
ironic.
Well, in keeping with that segment, irony abounds, there is something in common that Greg Craig has with Donald Trump, and it is this. The Southern District of New York, Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, chose to pass on prosecuting Greg Craig, and they threw it to Washington for whatever reason. The Southern District of Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office has chosen not to pass on multiple events having to do with Donald Trump's presidency.
Okay.
And you do have to question the timing of the investigation.
Very big story.
And the indictment into Greg Craig after it was passed on by other prosecutors. But Donald Trump says it's a very serious charge, very serious charges. And Donald Trump, of course, his supporters would tell us is a very honorable man. So, Mika, I guess the General Flynn charges were equally serious.
My
and he
God.
tried to actually stop that investigation dead in its tracks.
Yeah, we thought it was a big story. All right, still ahead, Democrats extend the deadline for the IRS to turn over President Trump's tax returns, but even Congress gets hold of those documents. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says lawmakers won't understand them.
Isn't that ironic?
Wait, really?
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.